Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 6:30 and a quorum of members is present. So the meeting of the Board of Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby,
Here.
Mr. Helmer, Ms. Connick,
Here.
Ms. Schulz, Mr. Seidel,
Here.
Ms. Spindler, Mr. Zielinski.
Here.
Ms. Schulz and Ms. Spindler will be joining us in closed session. Ms. Schulz will be remote tonight and calling in. I would entertain a motion to recess to closed session.
Madam Clerk, I make a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85 1C, E, and F of the Wisconsin statutes to consider A, the approval of closed session minutes of May 28th, B, employment performance and compensation matters pertaining to staff, C, discuss superintendent's goals for 2024-2025, and D, return to open session.
Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion by Mr. Seidel and a second by Mr. Zielinski. Please call the roll.
Mr. Seidel,
Yes.
Mr. Zielinski,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Ms. Connick.
Yes.
We're now adjourning closed session. We'll return as close to 7 p.m. as possible. It is now 7:07, and we are returning from closed session into open session. In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. For all those who are able, please rise. And now, for those who wish to prepare for the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by providing the agenda to the City Library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the Journal Sentinel, the Waukesha Freeman, the Waukesha Now, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. The first item is privilege of the floor, which I'm assuming we don't have. And the president's message, congratulations to the class of 2024. And the administrative team report.
Yeah, I would actually echo the sentiments. Congratulations to our graduates. We had 2 great ceremonies, one on Friday evening, one on Saturday morning. We apologize for the technical difficulties on Friday night as the live stream with our third party it did not air live, but we did get it posted as soon as we were able, a recorded version. Congratulations to both parents here as well, Renee and Amy. Your kids will do great things, and I'm sure all of them will, so congrats.
The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the notice and approval of minutes of the board meeting on May 28th. Are there any items that should be pulled out for separate consideration? Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
So I have a motion by Mr. Seidel and a second by Ms. Connick to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing, actually, could you call the roll?
Mr. Seidel,
Yes.
Ms. Connick,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Ms. Schultz,
yes,
Ms. Spindler,
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski.
Yes.
The motion passes. On to our regular agenda. The first item on our regular agenda is the Teaching and Learning Department Student Achievement Data Presentation.
So I will have our Kelly duo come up and present the spring FastBridge data.
Kelly squared. Okay, so you have seen our FastBridge data before, so we will kind of move, where am I pointing this at, Dan? There. So as you can see, this is our presentation schedule that has been approved by the board over time. So we are in the June spring to spring FastBridge. So I'm going to review elementary, and then Kelly will review secondary, and then if you have any questions at the end, we would be more than happy to answer them. So from an elementary standpoint, the board always wants to see third grade spring A reading and CBM students at or above the benchmark. So you can see A reading spring to spring. This is not a cohort, but you can see that third grade A reading and CBM are at the highest FastBridge levels to date. Just a reminder, we moved from MAP data to FastBridge data 3 years ago. Spring FastBridge A reading third to fourth grade cohort data, you can see that last spring we were at 62%, 62% again. Once again, fourth grade reading stayed consistent from year to year. We did not actually see that when we looked at winter to winter. Third grade winter, that should be spring, sorry. A math and automaticity, students at or above benchmark. Remember, A math, we use the 55th percentile. Some highlights there is you can see that math automaticity continues to be a strength. And A math is relatively stagnant, which is one of the reasons we've been talking about our math focus moving forward. Spring FastBridge A math third to fourth grade cohort proficiency. You can see last spring third graders last year, 64 to spring fourth grade students up to 68. Spring FastBridge Math Automaticity. This is a cohort again. You can see last year 80 and this year 81. Points of emphasis, I talked about those on the individual slides, but for anybody who's watching this elsewhere, we wanted to have one slide that highlighted the comments that I made earlier, and so I will turn it over to Kelly.
Hi. A reading is our first slide. This assessment, FastBridge A reading assessment, is most like the reading assessment that's on the ACT or pre-ACT Secure. We did see a decline from last spring to this spring, but when compared to 2 years ago, it is a similar score. We did have a celebration when you're looking at the students who took the A reading assessments last spring and those same students this spring, so we had to take out some students who didn't take both assessments. We did see an increase in the number of students who hit benchmark. For auto reading, so those are those foundational skills like morphology and letter identification at the elementary school, vocabulary at the secondary, we saw very consistent scores when looking at 7th grade from spring to spring. And we saw a slight decline looking at the students from 7th grade last year to 8th grade this year. When looking at math, you'll see the next couple slides are points of celebration for us at the secondary level. We saw an increase in the percentage of students who hit benchmark when looking spring to spring to spring across many 7th grade years. We saw an increase in the students who hit benchmark from spring last year as 7th graders to spring this year as 8th grade students. And that math assessment is the one that's most similar to like the ACT or pre-ACT Secure, the forward, it's more general. And then we look at automaticity. So you think about like fact fluency, math facts, that's what this is most similar to. And we saw an increase or growth when looking at the scores from 7th grade spring throughout the last couple of years. And we saw an increase in cohort data from the 7th graders last year to 8th graders this year as well. So just like Dr. Sanders, we have a summary slide of things that I already described as the presentation was happening, but if you have additional questions, we're both here to answer them.
Again, I do want to clarify that while we're presenting FastBridge data now, we look at multiple data points. This is one data point, forward exams are another, and then our classroom assessments are also another data point for us. So while we can celebrate, I think, a lot of the data that we're sharing today, just note that we look at various points and, some better than others, but again, I think given what Kelly and Kelly have shared with us, we're certainly content with where we're at and trending based on this data.
Not a question on this data, but do you guys have the ACT scores back yet?
We do.
Are you able
From
to
the junior assessment?
Yeah, are you able to present us at some point?
I can present those when they're de-embargoed. I think last year I had to wait till November.
Oh, okay.
It was a long wait.
Yeah.
But as soon as we can start talking about those.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next item on the agenda is the Employment Services Update and Employment Satisfaction Survey results.
So Nicole is here to present, she does 2 presentations for the board annually. This one is basically to kind of sum up, and she'll talk about, what she's highlighting today, but then she also comes back in September, October-ish, to kind of solidify our turnover rates and other pieces. So Nicole, thank you very much.
Sure thing. All right, so today we're going to be talking about our health plan updates. I threw those in. I haven't typically done these in a past year, but I threw in the health plan updates because that was a major change that we presented to our personnel committee and to the full board. So I wanted to provide an update on how open enrollment went. We'll also get into our employee experience survey as we usually do. And then I have a little preview of our staffing updates. We don't usually do it this early, but we do have quite a bit of data that we're able to share so far. So I wanted to just kind of present that, and then you'll get the full picture in September after the hiring season is kind of wrapped up. So for our health plan updates, we were really, really pleased with this outcome. So we currently have 3 plan offerings. One is a traditional PPO plan. It's got a kind of a high-ish deductible. It's with UMR and a higher kind of out-of-pocket max. We have a high deductible plan currently, and then we had a Neuro Network Aurora plan. I know there was a lot of concern about folks moving from the Aurora plan over to the Centivo Wisconsin 2 plan that you can see on this chart, which carves out Aurora as a network. But what we saw is that a lot of employees were willing to kind of change doctors or change where they were going, or just weren't married to said doctors, and went with the Wisconsin 2 high performance plan. And we're happy about that because the 2 plans that I've highlighted in green get us the best savings. Our employees also get the best savings from that. So it's really a win-win all the way across the board. So we're really, really pleased with how this shook out. So we're excited to see how this plays out then over the next year. This is data from our Everside Nearsite clinic that we have. It offers primary care from birth until well into adulthood for our employees. So what this is showing is our engagement, our participation with the clinic. And you can see that the trend lines continue to go up year over year. So those topmost lines, that's showing you the trend data for 2024 in terms of participation. Primary means our employees, spouse is their spouse, dependents would be any of their kiddos that are going to the clinic. We're really excited about the dependent numbers going up. We're seeing a lot more kids attending the clinic and going to the clinic and really being happy about visiting the clinic as well. And then our participation rate just continues to climb. So it's at 71.5% currently. And then I wanted to point this out too about our Nearsite clinic. So this is the clinic's Net Promoter Score. It's a 90. And so a Net Promoter Score range is from anywhere from negative 100 to 100. And our Nearsite clinic has a 90 based on the staff feedback, based on surveys that they're taking after they're visiting the clinic. The average healthcare industry, their Net Promoter Score is 45. So to be at a 90, it's really impressive. And so it's just a testament to the high quality of care that our employees are receiving at that clinic. And so we're really excited to continue to increase participation in our clinic. And what we're hoping we're going to see then with Centivo plan, our new Centivo plan, which requires that employees identify a primary care physician, that will continue to increase and drive employees to our Everside clinic. So we're really saving, we're saving as a district, our employees are saving money out of their own pockets with both our new plans and our primary care clinic. So our employees who elected into that Wisconsin 2 plan have a 0 deductible, which is just really like unheard of in this day and age, so we're very excited about that. It offers us the lowest total claims costs, and then employees are seeing top performing doctors at our local providers. And then that combined with our Everside utilization, we're saving a lot by employees using Everside as opposed to going to a big box or a Freighter or Aurora, which would typically cost in claims $250 to $500. So the more they use the clinic, the more we save on the claim side. And because the district cost is fixed for Everside. And then employees pay zero when they reuse Everside, and they receive really quality care, as you can see from our Net Promoter Scores. So now we're going to move on to our annual employee experience survey data. So just to break down, just like last year, we had a 96% participation rate, which we're quite pleased with. We had 532 total responses. 39% were support staff. 61% of the responses were licensed ed staff. So again, this just emphasizing, this survey includes all of our staff, our support staff, and our educators. In terms of employee engagement, the number remained in the 80s, so we're pleased with that. It didn't go down too much. It's at 83%, consistent with last year. These are just some of the questions that employees would answer that tie into that employee engagement measure. And then we're also excited to see this number go up slightly, that more employees this year would recommend the SDNB as a great place to work. So we're, again, and it's in the 80s, we're very pleased with that score, and it's ticking up slightly. Employee well-being is trending back up into the right place. We hope that at some point we'll be able to even get that into the 80s as well, but we're trending back up from last year. And then intent to stay is down. It's down locally, but it is still above the national norm. So last year, Qualtrics, every 2 years, they do an annual or a national survey. So if we're looking at our national survey from Qualtrics, 62% across the board in the education field in North America have the intend to stay. That compared to our own data locally, 69% of our educators intend to stay, compared with 62% of our support staff. I think this is a trend not just in southeastern Wisconsin, but kind of across employers across the board. Part-time staff, there's just a higher degree of turnover among that group. It could be tied to benefits. Oftentimes it is people needing to get benefits, so they're going more full-time. So we're seeing a lot of movement still with support staff. We're seeing that in southeastern Wisconsin in general when we talk to other HR directors regarding paraprofessionals and so forth. So something that we continue to look at and examine. And then as far as licensed educators, I think just anecdotally from an HR standpoint, we're seeing it was kind of our employees are hitting that age where they're getting squeezed with their kids and their parents are aging and there's a lot going on in the home. We're seeing a lot of kind of personal things bubbling up to the surface, again, anecdotally. So there's a little bit of that, I think, that's playing into that number as well. Obviously, we can't share some of those things, but in our office, we've seen that people are a little bit stressed out with some personal things going on. We have people advancing in their career as well. We're really good at growing people in the school district of New Berlin, and sometimes we have places for them to move like we did this year, and other times we don't. So we continue to keep working on that as well. So our top 5 areas of growth for us, so places that we want to continue to improve, experience versus expectations. So does what I experience here in the school district of New Berlin meet what I expected to be doing here in the school district of New Berlin? So that number is an area, it's going up from last year, but we need to continue to grow that piece. Communication, going up, ticked up a couple points, but it's still an area that we want to improve upon. Pay and benefits continues to be a point of contention. So something that we're, as we're working through developing or updating our compensation model, doing some market adjustments and things like that, we continue to work on that and then message back to our employees the great things we're doing. One of the things that we did change this year were our benefits, in the hopes that by reducing our employees' out-of-pocket costs, that would have a positive impact on pay and benefits. Recognition is another area where we want to continue to focus our growth and what we can do to recognize the excellence that is happening among our staff, the great things they're doing for our students, and then making sure that we're not putting too many barriers to folks being able to get their work done, and that's really what that work process piece is. This is in red because this is related to a question That is, what are things that we could do better to grow? So these bubbles are related to an open-ended text question. So we said, where can we grow as a district? So employees write open responses. We go and read through every single comment and code every single comment with a theme or multiple themes, depending on the comment. So the bigger the bubble, the more people commented or made a comment relative to that theme. Smaller bubble, the fewer the comments there were. So what really stands out here, again, very similar to what we saw on the last slide, pay, communication, our special ed modeling, student accountability, so that kind of ties into student behaviors. So those are all things, are areas that employees would like us to be able to grow and address. And now our areas of strength, they're basically, those areas stayed consistent from last year or grew slightly. So we have engagement. Our engagement continues to trend high. Employees feeling like they fit their role, that it's a good fit for them, that the district continues to live our values, and we do that through our work, that our employees feel respected, and our employees feel very safe. That even ticked up 5 points this year. So we're very pleased with that. And then in green, this was a positive themed question, open-ended question, text question. So what do you identify as the district's strengths? So again, the bigger the circle, the more people that commented on it. So leadership support is strong. They enjoy working with their teams. The culture in their building, their culture with their teams are positive. The supports that the district provides to students trended high, along with how we collaborate with one another. And then we did see this was nice to see that this going up. So employees do believe that by commenting and responding to the feedback, that the district is going to respond to the feedback they provide in the survey. So this went up 5 points from the previous year. That was the first year that we started surveying or asking this survey question on the survey. We have made a point to continually communicate out the action steps we are taking, the themes we're finding in the survey, and how we're responding to it. So we're trying to be very purposeful in terms of that communication. It's getting communicated at the building level, through our newsletters, and at the district level, on our websites, and so forth. And finally, we'll end with our licensed ed staff update. So this is just specific to our teaching staff. 77% of our open teaching positions are filled currently, which is really great. It's early June, so we're hoping to close that gap even further in the next couple weeks. We had 31 licensed educator openings to date. 9 of them are new positions, and that's related to our district office restructuring with our retirement of Dr. Sanders. We're adding some coordinators to that position. And in response to staff feedback and our student needs, we've also added in some student support and special education support, so school psychs, another EL coach, and so forth. We had 22 positions that we needed to replace. And then what we're seeing in terms of why people are resigning, if they are choosing to resign, it seems to be a lot of career advancements. So we have people going off to be business managers in other districts. We've seen people, going on to director positions and principal positions and so forth. So some of that is career advancement. A lot of those are also in district. So we were happy about that. And then some are leaving the teaching profession altogether. And we saw this as a trend starting last year where career changers were one of the highest reasons for people submitting their resignations. And so we are seeing that trending this year as well. So our next steps. So this is just a very broad overview of our survey. There's a lot more that we can dig into in terms of the data, looking at it by school, looking at it by role, and then we'll be disaggregating all of that, going through it by location and job type. A lot of this will get dug into and analyzed, and then we'll develop those action plans during our data retreat this summer. We're also going to be looking at what are our employee experience goals going to be for this upcoming fall and for this upcoming school year. And then we will present this fall, usually it's in September, where we present our final retention report. So we'll have that full picture of our retention data for you at that point in time. Any questions?
I have two quick ones.
Sure.
The first one is, when you presented the top 3 improvements, you mentioned communication. What did that mean exactly? As communication was an area of improvement, what does that?
It doesn't get into the nitty-gritty. Now, we can go in and dissect the comments. So some of that is regarding how we communicate some of our initiatives from the top to the bottom. But we really have to tease that down into the comments. So that's something we're going to drill into, right? So right now, like I said, it's just a very broad overview,
Okay.
but we can definitely, as we're drilling down into the data, we can probably find you a more clear response to that.
Yeah,
question.
it's kind of high level and
Yep.
doesn't really
Right.
get to the why. The second question was around leaving the profession.
Mm-hmm.
What are the reasons for that? Why leaving the profession?
Some of them are very personal, financial. Some of them come with, and I don't want to get into it because it's their personal financial issues that they're working through. But a lot of them relate to that, where something happened in their life where now they've got these extra payments to make, and now they need a job that's going to give them pay full-time, full year, compared to, a 10-month kind of pay. A lot of it's related to that, where they're looking for that 260-day job versus a 190 kind of a job.
So it's very much related to pay in a lot of cases?
Yes, yeah.
Thanks.
Questions?
Again, this is, I guess, what we would call phase 1 of the 2-point conversation that Nicole will have with the board. And unless there's any other questions, thank you very much, Nicole.
The next item is the preliminary 2024-25 budget presentation.
Yeah, so you have a couple documents. We did provide the budget booklet to the board in the board packet since last week, but we wanted to kind of dive in and kind of give a higher level of why we're here today. The first thing that I want to clarify is that we are not seeking approval of anything tonight. This is kind of our first blush at the preliminary budget, but we will be seeking approval of the preliminary budget at the next meeting. I'm not going to read this slide to you, but if you would mind taking a look at it, essentially there are reasons why we need to have a preliminary budget approved, and these are them. And we will obviously have a budget hearing and annual meeting in September per usual, and then the board will adopt an official original budget in October. Based on what we have in the budget booklet, these are the general fund revenue assumptions that we're looking at, and these are probably the biggest levers of our revenue. So enrollment, we're projecting it to be flat state aid projections, a slight increase in per pupil revenue limit, and elimination of ESSER reimbursement. Quickly, ESSER dollars are COVID relief reimbursement dollars. Those are all finally now going to be off of our books. As far as general fund assumptions, the board approved a 3% increase in base wages. As a result of that, our benefits increased. We also have staffing increases as a result, which you already heard Nicole talk about, in special education and other support positions with our remodeling of central office. We are also seeing increases in transportation and utilities. Utilities, we're banking on a 15% increase based on the feedback that we're getting from the companies. And then the transportation, obviously the board approved recently our transportation agreement. And then expenses to exceed revenue per the proposed funding plan for capital maintenance. Again, more details are found in the budget booklet. As mentioned, we are early in the process. We control what we can, but there are a lot of variables that we can't. So for example, state aid distribution. Our enrollment, again, we're projecting flat enrollment, but not always something that, I can encourage people to have more babies and move into our district, but I can't do much more than cheer for that. We have equalized property values, state legislation, school funding levels, and then I do want to mention that this came up recently, is because of the MPS financial crisis, and I do call it a crisis, there are ripple effects of what happens in Milwaukee and some of these other bigger districts. So when they go to referendum, in some cases that negatively impacts us. I'm going to have Patrick explain very high level for you. Very high level, Patrick. In as layman's terms as possible, can you explain the issues that we have with the funding formula? And so, for example, when MPS spends more, what happens to them? And when we spend more, what happens to us?
So the big difference between the school district of New Berlin and the Milwaukee Public School District is we are considered a property-rich school district. They are considered a aid-rich school district. Their property values are much lower. Because of that, they receive aid on all three levels, primary, secondary, and tertiary, where we only receive aid on the primary and secondary. Anything in tertiary is actually a negative for us. What that means is if we spend more money, we actually get less aid. Whereas in Milwaukee Public Schools, the more money they spend, the more aid they get. And so if they pass this referendum to increase their revenue limit by $250 million, that means they will be spending that much more money, which means they will get more of the pot of money that the state has for education, which means 391 of the other 420 districts will have a smaller pot of money to get state aid from.
Make it
enough
make
and quick enough?
sense. Make it make sense. We can't, but that's the way the current funding formula works. And what I will say is there are some things that I will be talking to Janet about on behalf of the board to possibly consider resolutions to sending to Governor Evers and others as it relates to the current situation. Some of the things that are happening right now, I happen to work closely with Dale Kuyenga, who used to be our local state senator. He was on the finance committee, the joint finance committee, and is now the executive director for MMAC. MMAC has gone out publicly discouraging the referendum for various reasons, and even more so even now after the fact. Is it possible that that MPS could actually not collect the $252 million? That is possible, but is it likely? I'm not sure. So MMAC is actually pushing hard for the MPS leadership to not recoup those dollars until they've got their finances in order, which is yet to be determined. So point being is that is a caveat. When we met with actually our finance committee chair, Ron, last week, this was something that we didn't realize the potential impact, and so is a caveat in our potential planning. But let us not be discouraged, because again, we can control what we can control, and unfortunately, there are bigger problems elsewhere. I want to remind the board about our debt within the operating budget and fund balance. And when I started here 17 years ago, it seemed like an insurmountable task to try and balance budgets with the amount of debt we had annually in the operating budget, to the tune of anywhere between $3.5 and over $5 million annually. I am ecstatic at this point to be able to tell you that rather than looking down what sometimes looking down the barrel of a gun year in and year out, to now I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I can see the light to the other side of getting through this financial situation that we found ourselves in. So while we appreciate what the board had done to allow us a bit of a reprieve for a few years by paying down some of that debt, I want to remind you that we paid down that debt early with use of our fund balance. And so What we would like to be able to do is use a similar mechanism to bridge us, to get us to the light at the end of the tunnel. As a reminder, this debt incurred was because we built the Ronald Reagan Elementary School and like rooms like this, the field house, the PAC, major upgrades at New Berlin West, within the operating budget, where most other districts seek things like that and actually gain additional revenue through a referendum. That did not happen here for various reasons. But at the end of the day, we've been balancing budgets year in and year out. Not always easy to do, but here we are. It's a new day, a new dawn, and very excited that we're at this point. So essentially, we're going to be recommending that in order for us to get through, to weather through the last few years of the debt in the operating budget, we've built up our fund balance strategically. And again, we've used fund balance to bridge deficits before, and we are proposing that we do that again. And but there are two options. One option is a year-to-year fund balance drawdown. So what we could do is just go from one year to the next and just take money from fund balance. Again, that's our own money, and we're just reallocating within our budget, taking that money year to year. The other option, which is what we're going to be recommending, is doing a one-time fund balance drawdown. And there's a rationale behind that. But again, we would replenish the fund balance once the debt is paid off, or the majority of our debt is paid off in 2030. So here's the plan. But let me just start with this. Our state revenue limits, there's one pot of money that we get as a school district. The allocation is determined by the state funding formula, but I want to clarify that if state aid goes down, local taxes go up, and vice versa. And so, but know that the distribution of the state aid is an extremely complicated calculation. And if you look at the bottom right of that slide, those are all the things that kind of come into play. And that's where, for example, the district shared costs and things like that, that's where we get an impact by things that happen in other districts like MPS. So taking that rationale, again, if you end up taking option one, which is a year-to-year fund balance drawdown, sure, we could do that, but know that we will see a 15% decrease in state aid each of those years that we do that. Again, back to the point that Patrick made earlier, as we spend more money, which is we would be spending more money because we're spending more money to balance our budgets, it reduces our state aid per the formula. If we do a one-time fund balance drawdown, similar to what we did when we paid down that debt, we take a one-time hit. We get a 15% reduction in state aid one time rather than multiple times. And again, there's a correlation between less state aid means higher local property taxes. So this is what it looks like. And I want to clarify one thing. This is not the actual expenses. So this is not fund balance. This is the estimated state aid that we will receive. So option one is going to be the option where we would just over time draw down our fund balance. But as you can see, we're getting less state aid year over year over year over year, which means to make up that difference, we have to charge that to our local property taxpayers. If you look at our option two that we are recommending, you do that spend down one time, and as you look at it over time, we only get that one-time hit, and we're able to kind of recoup the state aid at a much higher, quicker rate. And so again, why would we recommend the option two of drawing it down? To save local property taxpayers their dollars. That's why. Let's talk about fund balance. We have built up our fund balance to $19 million. And if we do it the one-time recommended approach, it would take us down to 13 million through 2028, and then we would start building that back up slowly in 2029. I want to clarify a couple things as far as our fund balance goes. We are currently at over 35% fund balance. Our board policy states that we should have a minimum of 10% fund balance. So we have a very healthy fund balance. And remember, we did it strategically, knowing we were going to need a bridge the next 4 or 5 years. If you look at the drawdown to the $13 million, that actually puts us at just right around 20% fund balance. That's still twice the amount that the board has in their board policy, which Ron had asked, when we met last week, when did the board approve that policy? That was approved, I believe, Ron, we said it was 2 years ago or last year?
21.
Got it. So that's recent. But again, Moody's and others that give us our bond ratings are looking at 15% or more, and we're still well within that. Let's now move into Fund 41. So again, I'm not going to read this to you, but Fund 41 is a mechanism that allows us to set aside funds for capital maintenance. And we've been using this fund since 2022, and the board had challenged us at one point to start socking away at least $1 million in Fund 41 annually. That was quite the challenge. We accepted it, we met it, we exceeded it. The board has now then, as of their board goal for the current year, has wanted at least $1.25 million in Fund 41. And our proposed plan would continue to fund Fund 41 at the rate of approximately $1.25 million over the next several years. The tax levy impact. Again, very difficult slide to see, but if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, that's kind of what we're looking at for 24, 25. These are based on conservative budgeting principles. So we actually think this would go down, assuming things are, as we're projecting them, conservatively, it would go down. What does it mean exactly? So yes, we would see a 3.46% tax levy impact, but know that that's not a direct correlation with the actual mill rate because you've got, again, property values and everything else. And so based off of our current budget, we would be seeing a $28 gross school tax levy impact on a home valued at $250,000. Note that the tax rate has dropped each of the previous 10 years, and that the tax levy change has been below the rate of inflation the past 10 years as well, at least on the school district side. Again, we are not seeking approval tonight. We wanted to introduce these concepts to you. Happy to answer any questions now between meetings, and certainly at the next meeting as needed. Any comments, questions, or concerns?
What did you say the $250,000 home, what the fiscal impact? It's $595 per thousand of assessed value, so what did you say it would be?
$28 per $250,000.
All right, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Moving on, the next item is the second read approval of policy revisions from the semi-annual catch-up. Neola update 32-2. Do I have a motion for this?
Motion to approve?
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So I have a motion by Ms. Spindler and a second by Mr. Seidel to approve. Any discussion?
Again, per Neola, our consultant, this is kind of the second time that we get to touch and look at policies. These are really more based on law and regulations, based on what Neola is recommending. Again, I did not receive any comments or questions from any board members. There really wasn't much to consider, so we recommend approval as presented.
Any discussion? And can you call the roll?
Ms. Spindler,
Here.
Mr. Seidel,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Ms.
Yes.
Konick, Ms. Schultz,
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski.
Yes.
Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is action on items discussed in closed session. We have one.
I move to approve the employment services as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Spindler and a second by Mr. Seidel to approve the employment services report. All those, can you call the roll again?
Ms. Spindler,
Yes.
Mr. Seidel,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Ms. Konick,
Yes.
Ms. Schultz,
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski.
Yes.
That brings us to our future meetings and dates. Board meetings are generally held the second and fourth Mondays beginning at 7 p.m. in the conference room E at District Office, unless otherwise noted. So our next meeting is June 24th. They'll be here at New Berlin West. July 22nd will be the only meeting we have in July, and then August 12th. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Seidel and a second by Mr. Zelinski to adjourn. Is there anybody that opposes adjourning? So all those in favor, raise your right hand. This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Amy. Bye-bye.
Board members, just